I think the ultimate culture is a culture of excellence and a culture of training and furthering your education. And of course, you got to have fun doing it, right? If you have a too strict of a culture, it's not going to be a lot of fun. People aren't really going to look forward to coming to work. So you got to find that balance between the professionalism and the fun. If you can find a good balance that fits for you, like I found one that fits for me and Denny's Auto, it starts attracting really good talent on the front counter side of the business and the back shop side of the business too.
Thank you again for joining us here on the Lift Your Shop podcast. Today we have another great guest. We have Mitch Moncur with Denny's Auto. They're based in Riverton, Utah. And today Mitch is gonna be a dive in deep with us in terms of creating an amazing shop culture, how he really helped create this as the chief cheerleading officer there at Denny's Auto. And then also we're going to dig into hiring, again, how to find these people that then will cohesively mold into your culture. Mitch, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on here. I'm very honored and very excited to jump in with y'all.
Yeah, so this is going to be a blast. And so to just start us off, why don't you just share a little bit about your background, how you got started in this industry and kind of the point to where you are now?
Cool. Yeah, for sure. The shop is a family-run shop. My grandfather started the shop in 1963. My dad became his partner in like the early 90s. And growing up, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with this industry. Just seeing the stress that my family was going through over year after year. But I did work here during high school. I studied the custodial arts in high school. So I did a very good job of scrubbing the bays, cleaning the bathrooms, stuff like that. When I graduated high school in 2010, I started working here part-time doing oil changes and emissions testing and safety inspection, stuff like that. Because I wanted that knowledge to help me get through college, more or less. I wanted to be a nutritionist, Kelsey, and I went to the University of Utah for one semester, and I found how many math classes I had to take to be a nutritionist, which isn't a lot, but it was a lot for me. So decided that wasn't for me. I had a 66 Mustang behind the shop that the engine needed to be rebuilt on. Didn't know how the engine worked, but I was like, it's time. I'm going to tear apart this engine. Tore apart the engine. I saw how the engine worked, and I dropped out of the University of Utah that next day and went to trade school the day after that. And so I've been working here professionally for 12 years now, got a management position about 7 years ago, and became part owner about a year and a half ago. And now here we are.
That is awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
I love how you just quickly took action in terms of next day, boom, college not for me, boom, trade school. Like that's there was no dilly-dallying in terms of that time frame there.
Oh no, dude! I took the oil pan off. I saw the crankshaft, and I was like, "This is the coolest thing in the world!" Like, get me out of here, man. This nutrition is not for me anymore. I want to treat my body like an amusement park for a while.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm like, for some of those that are listening, just knowing that you do not have to go to a university and feel like that. There's a lot of satisfaction that can happen going through trade school. It shouldn't be looked down upon. And so just making sure that people are aware and you can have plenty of success in going in different paths. So that's awesome. That's the path that you took. And so I know something that you're passionate about also is kind of culture, finding ways to be able to develop that. So why don't we first talk about what you consider an ideal like shop culture?
Yeah. So a culture, by definition standpoint, right, it's just a shared belief and behavior system within a company or a family or a unit of people. I think the ultimate culture is a culture of excellence and a culture of training and furthering your education. And of course, you got to have fun doing it, right? If you have a too strict of a culture, it's not going to be a lot of fun. People aren't really going to look forward to coming to work. So you got to find that balance between the professionalism and the fun. But if you can find a good balance that fits for you, like I found one that fits for me and Denny's Auto, it starts attracting really good talent on the front counter side of the business and the back shop side of the business too.
That's amazing. And so I guess in terms of the culture that you have there now, what would you say if we were to ask maybe an employee in the shop, how do you think they would describe the culture there?
How they would describe the culture right off the bat, tight-knit family. That's how they would describe it. And digging in a little bit deeper to the family is one of our core values of the shop. So we are literally like this. We're really tight. We do ditch days together and camping trips and spend a lot of time with each other outside of the shop too. And that's what they're going to tell you. It's a tight-knit family, and we love to make fun of each other. But we also, when it comes to the customer and their vehicle, that's when the professionalism comes out, right? In between those little gaps, we are making fun of each other nonstop, just like a family does. But something that we also do that I think is often overlooked when people say their family is part of their culture is families also care personally and they challenge directly to make you grow. And that's something that's very big, that's underlying, because we all challenge each other and we all care personally. But I don't think they would give you that answer right off the bat, but they would definitely say family.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I know obviously it's not an overnight thing, developing the culture that you want a shop to have. And so I guess what would you say were like the very beginning steps in terms of determining how to help the culture go in the direction that you wanted it to?
For sure, man. And that's a great question, Kelsey, because the culture that Denny made, he grew up in the 50s. He's an old school kind of guy, or was an old school kind of guy. So he ruled with an iron fist.
Mhm.
It worked for him. He was successful, but he had a hard time keeping up with the changing generations on how to lead them, how to bring them into the culture and hear
Yep.
their ideas. It was kind of the highway, but still, he did fantastic with what he did. When I started working on the culture about 7 years ago, 5 years ago, I didn't like that because I was scared of getting in trouble. I was scared of getting yelled at and the repercussions of making a mistake. I wanted to take that culture of kind of like fear. I don't think fear is like really the correct word to describe his leadership style and the culture that he had in the shop. But that's the closest word I can think of right now. So we're going to roll with it. How I started changing it was I just met with the guys once a week. Every single week, we would do like a one-on-one, or some people call them performance reviews. We don't call them performance reviews because I think that's a stupid name for a one-on-one, to be honest. I think it puts that fear into your teammate, right?
Mhm.
Oh, good Lord, I'm getting a performance review this week. Oh, no. So we call them one-to-ones or TED Talks or church or something like that. And I really just tried to get to know my teammates on a very personal level, start building that trust that way. I wanted to know them outside of the shop and not just in the shop. I wanted to know what their spouses were doing, what their kids were doing, how their baseball tournament went last week. How did they win? Did they lose? How'd your kid do? Stuff like that. Started building in that trust. And once we had the trust, then we were able to care on a very personal level. And the trust was there to provide us an avenue of challenging directly as well. So the trust building was the biggest part for me.
That's awesome. And I know you mentioned then having those meetings, and just out of curiosity, what is like the typical frequency of how often you have these with them?
Once a week, every Tuesday.
Once a week.
So some of the guys will told you TED Talks, church. One of the guys calls them Tuesday Talks. Anything, we call it anything but a performance review. Because of course we're going to talk shop, but we don't have to if we don't want to.
Yeah. And then I guess, do you devote out 30 minutes of time, an hour of time, 15 minutes? What does that typically look like?
Getting started, it was a long time.
Yeah.
It was probably 30 to 45 minutes to get it rolling and really start digging in there. Now they're probably 15 minutes on average. Sometimes they run a little bit longer, sometimes they're shorter, but that's about how much time it takes.
Okay. No, that's great. And is there, I guess when you started, were there certain questions that you're like, okay, these are the ones I need? I'm sure like when you're going about it in your very first time, it's like, okay, I know these are important. I know what I want to accomplish, but did you is it off the cuff, or was it a little bit more structured?
I started out a little bit more structured and more talked about shop at that point. What did you feel you were really successful at last week? What did you feel you struggled with last week? How can the shop support you to overcome that struggle? Things like that. Now I just ask them, what's on your mind? And I just stop and I stare at them until they give me something to work with. I'm very comfortable in the silence. It's very difficult for me to be comfortable in silence, but I learned how to do it because if you can look them in the eye and you're silent after a question like that, they're going to give you something. And it could be anything. It could be boy problems, girl problems, whatever. But that's what's on their mind. And if that's on their mind, that could either be helping their production and performance or hurting their production and performance. So if it's hurting it, we're going to spend more time talking about why is this bothering you? What have you tried to do to solve this problem? What can the shop do? What can I personally do to help you? anything you need to get through this rut in the road. And if it's a positive thing, what's on their mind is something really good, then that's really easy to roll with, man. Really easy. Man, I'm so glad your relationship's rocking out, dude. That's awesome. Your kid just got honors. Fantastic. Now, like, he's like, they just take off.
Yeah.
They take off and they perform really well. But sometimes people need that help getting out of the rut. And if you provide, as an owner or a manager, you provide that outlet for them, it's incredibly powerful. They care for it. They feel cared for.
Yeah.
And a great way of retaining people too is personally caring for them.
Absolutely. And I think the only way that can be done is through not just listening, but like actively listening. Like that's something I know I'm trying to get better at, like consistently in all my conversations. It's just, some days it's hard to be like really there and present, but especially when you're speaking about your culture and how important that is, how like that can change the whole trajectory of the shop and the revenue that comes in, that it's so important to like really focus the minimal 15-minute of time that you're just actively listening to them, hearing it. So I love that. That sounds like that's something that you have really developed as a strength. So yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you, man. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a lot of fun now. But like I said, if any of your viewers or listeners haven't done it, it's really hard to get that ball rolling. Just stick with it, man. Give it a few months and it's going to get easier and they're going to open up to you. And then, yeah, like you said, the culture is going to create more revenue, more profitability, attract higher talent. It's magic, more or less. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Treat people with respect and dignity and they love you for it.
Perfect. I love that.
Why would you treat anyone without respect and dignity?
Exactly. But you touched on kind of a perfect segue point where you mentioned now hiring, and it just attracts now the individuals that you want to have without having to do this deep dive search that I know right now hiring is a very hot point for a lot of shops out there. They're just looking for the bodies, but you also want to make sure you have the right body. Because it's a body does not mean that it will help your shop and make things easier. So I guess in terms of your hiring process, how would you describe that? I guess at a very high level.
So I take hiring very seriously, just like everyone in the trades is right now. But we are fortunate because our hiring process has allowed us to build a bench. I have my names right here. We have 6 riders that want to work here. And we have 5 technicians that want to work here. They're all waiting for a phone call. Hey, I have a spot opened up, dude. What do you say? And it's hard to build a bench, but I get to go to bed and sleep easy at night because I'm not worrying about staffing. And I don't ever want to worry about staffing because it sucks being short-staffed or having the incorrect people in the incorrect seats on the bus or whatever analogy you like to use, Kelsey.
Yep.
It's not fun. So we've tried the tool trucks, the raffles, the finder's fees. None of that really worked for us. It might just be our area. A lot of other owners that I know, they have success with that, but we haven't. So our big ones that we use we get a lot of good response from Indeed and a lot of good response from KSL.com. That's like a local Utah, Idaho, Wyoming website kind of thing. You put job ads out there. And we also use Facebook too, but I don't put ads on Facebook. I try to find technicians in my area by just using the Facebook search function, and I add them as a friend and just invite them in to see the shop. I invite them over for Thursday lunch or whatever and see what happens. Our hiring process is fairly lengthy. Our last guy that we hired, he threw a fit because there's a personality test in there, and his results kept coming back inaccurate, so we had to take it 3 times. But he ended up working out fantastic. But yeah, so like our first interview is just more like a meet and greet. I want to know if we're going to jive together, if our motivations, our values, if they align. Because if they don't align, that's fine. But I don't want to waste your time or my time on a second and third interview. So we'll invite them in, just kind of, hey, what do you like to do for fun? Where are you working at now? Awesome. Just get to know them on a personal level. And if the first interview goes well, I'll get their phone number and email address like you always should. And I'll just make sure it's okay with them if I reach out once a month through a phone call or a text message or an email just to see how they're doing. If they need any help with their current employment or if they need help finding another shop or whatever. Second interview, that's when we do the personality test and the communication test. And that's going to be a little bit more in depth. That one's going to be more like Tell me a time you were working with a team and a project failed. How did you respond to the failure? Tell me about a time your work was criticized in a public format. How did you respond to that? What did you do with that information? And it's not all negative either. Tell me about a time you exceeded expectations anytime in life. I want to hear about that too. I want to see how they reacted to that. I don't really like the interview questions that are like yes or no or concrete answers. My communication style, I'm a peacock, so I really like story time.
Yep.
I like colors and videos, and I want to hear all the ins and outs of everything. And so that's why I like those kind of story-based, open-ended interview questions.
Yeah.
And the third interview, that's pretty much the one where we're going to review their personality test and communication test and make them an offer and negotiate from there on.
Gotcha.
It's worked out really well for us.
That it sounds like it. And then, but in terms of your test, is it a written test? Is it something they're taking on like an iPad? Or is it just open-ended questions that you're discussing? And how do you kind of grade that criteria?
So one of the tests is a communication test. That one's just a paper test. It's 18 questions long, really basic. It's also called the bird test. So there's a eagle, peacock, dove, and owl. Each of those communication styles have strong points and weak points. Owls are really analytical. They're not really people oriented. They're more task oriented. So an owl would probably not make a very good service advisor.
Yep.
They might make a really good diagnostician though. Peacocks and eagles are more people oriented and they're more of a driving personality. So they're going to be ones that are probably better on the front counter.
Yep.
But there's always exceptions to that rule.
Yep.
The other test is called the Wonderlic test. That's an online test, and you get a report that's 40 some odd pages long. I just read like the first 10 pages. And awesome. I got a pretty good grasp on what this dude's all about or gal's all about.
Nice, awesome. And in terms of that process, do you also deliberate with like current employees that are there? Or is it just maybe between yourself and a couple other leaders? Like, how does that work?
The first interview is usually just with me and the candidate. Second interview, I'll bring on, maybe it depends on the position they're looking for.
Yeah.
If it's a quick lube guy, I'm not gonna, okay, we're gonna do a massive group interview. All 10 employees, 10 teammates, get over here. We're gonna beat the chocolate out of this poor guy. So it depends on what role they're applying for. If they're applying for like a service writer position or like a high level technician, I'm gonna have my foreman there, both of my writers, and of course my partner. He's in the back there. He wants to wave hi. There you go. Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah. And my partner is the one that usually takes care of the third interview. Usually do that one on his own. He's the CFO. He's in charge of payroll and stuff like that.
Perfect. That's super exciting in terms of the intensiveness of the process. I think a lot of people are more like, oh, this person showed up. When can you bring your toolbox? And so, and so I'm glad that, yes, you have that process there.
Yeah, we used to be like the warm body shop. You have a pulse, come on in. Let's get you working, dude. And that bit us in the butt multiple times. So we learned our lesson not to do that. Let's put some structure and some strategy to these and make sure long run and short run, we're going to be happy with each other. It's not worth it. Because that one wrong hire, dude, it can cost you a lot of money. You got to make sure you get the right warm body.
Yeah.
On the right seat on the bus.
For sure. And so let's just dig in a little bit deeper on the hiring process. And so I'm sure you've had experience with now multiple people. What would you say is kind of the top things that are like green light? Yes, these are certain criteria that mold well with our culture that you just have found them respond that way in the interview. And then the flip side of it, I would love to hear then some of the red flags that you're like, okay, based on how this person answers some of these questions, like, I know this is not going to work. So I guess why don't we go on both sides? Start with the good.
So the green flags and red flags are, let me restart that. Everybody interviews extremely well. It's like a knack humans have to make themselves look better than they really are. And that's why I like using the personality profile test and the communication test, because I can see through the BS a little bit easier that way.
Yeah.
There might not be a lot of BS to even read through, but there's always going to be a little bit there. Big red flag ones are, well, green light, we want to do the good ones first, right?
Yeah.
If they can describe to me what their teaching style or coaching style is, that's a good one.
Okay.
If they can tell me a story about a team project that succeeded or failed, and how they responded to both of those, that's a green light one. Anything that's team oriented or development, and they answer that along what I'm looking for, of course, that's a good answer, right?
Yep.
Culture, honesty, family, integrity, excellence, growth. Red flags, if they say they don't like working with people, or they don't get along with authority, or anything that's anti-team or lone wolfy is not going to be a good fit for us. They're going to be miserable, and everyone else in the shop is going to be miserable too. If they are an isolationist, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And of course, how they respond to criticism, that's a telling one too.
Yeah. Do you get people that really that in the interviews say that, oh, I don't take a response to authority and things like that, or do you get that from just like the test and how that pulled out?
I get that a little bit of both. I get that a little bit from the personality profile test, and I also get that from how do you respond to criticism? Who gave you that criticism? What did you do with that criticism? Because you can tell if you ask them how they handle criticism, and if they fly off the handle and they start telling you a story about some boss that was upset with them or something like that, and they are like, I didn't do anything wrong, they're not going to take ownership. They're going to be hard to hold accountable. They're not going to be very responsible. Stuff like that, man.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can definitely see that in terms of that responsiveness. So that's awesome. But then in terms of when they now you like them, they're starting, is there almost like a seasoning period where you're like, okay, we still obviously need to make sure this person is the right fit, or like what does that sort of, or when they start, they're in it and they're good to go? Like, what does that look like there?
So their first day, bring them on, right? We're going to do a shop lunch, have everyone hang out with them for an hour. We're going to surround them. We're going to kind of surround them with as many teammates for the maximum amount of time possible. Just so they can get to experience that culture a little bit more on a personal level that's not with myself. They get to go talk to Dueno or Joe or George, it doesn't matter. I want them completely surrounded by this culture.
Yeah.
Because I love the culture. The team loves the culture. They need to be a part of the culture. So we're going to flood them with that. And all new hires, they're on like a 90-day probationary period. I don't really like the word probationary, but get a trial run for 90 days. And after 90 days, then we'll sit down and ask them, okay, Matt, like your 90 days is up, dude. What did you think of your first 3 months here? Did you like it? What don't you like? Are you being challenged enough? Is it too much? Stuff like that. That's when the caring personally, you should have a good standing relationship with that person for them to really open up at that point.
Yeah.
And be honest with you. So.
Yeah. No, for sure. Awesome. I love kind of the process that you have going there. And then go back now onto the bench in terms of, first, how do you find them through just like they're like second place or third place in the interviewing process of an open position? Or was it from you searching through Facebook for this person and learning more about them? Which, by the way, that is an awesome tactic, just typing that in Facebook. Same thing with LinkedIn. I do the same thing in terms of both finding other shop owners, but then also, like, again, finding the right team members and just digging deep in terms of meeting your criteria. Because you obviously have a vision of what that looks like. But I get, for you, in terms of, again, finding the bench, where are you getting those people?
Yeah, we are always looking for good people, right? So we are always hiring. Everyone on the team knows that we're always hiring. We'll put an ad out sometimes once a month, sometimes once a quarter. To be honest with you, it depends on the mood I'm in. I'm going to put out an ad. I should be more disciplined with that, but it's all good. It's working out so far. Most of them that I have found on our bench have been from Indeed or KSL. Okay. And I have that conversation of I have a spot available or I don't, and this interview is for a future position at that first interview.
Okay.
And you have to be extremely upfront with people with that. And once they get the thought process behind a bench, they're okay with it. They're not bummed out or anything like that. They appreciate your honesty. But, so like the first interview, I'll be like, hey, Renee or Michael, whoever their name is, thanks for coming in. Like, this first interview is just to get to know each other. Let's see if we like each other to even go further, because I don't want to waste anyone's time.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And just so you know, also, we're growing like crazy. This position you're interviewing for is not going to be available for I don't know how long. It might be a year, it might be 5 years, I don't know. But I want to feel you out, you want to feel me out. And if we're happy with each other at the end of this interview, I'd love to get your cell phone number, and I want to call you or text you once a month just to check in. But yeah, they usually don't go to the second interview if they're going to be put on the bench, because we're fully staffed right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally makes sense. And then, so in terms of now remembering like to text them or reach out to them, how do you just set a reminder in your phone, or how do you go about keeping that conversation going?
So I'm a little bit of an old school kind of guy. I have a sheet of paper above my desk that says waitlist service advisors and waitlist technicians. And I have a date of like the 12th, I'll put 12 or whatever. So at the 12th of every month, I'm going to text them or call them or whatever. And I have notes next to their names. 3 kids, loves the outdoors, boating, camping, and snowboarding. Working at one of my competitors right now. He's living in a van. He wants to live a nomad lifestyle. So now I have some information that I can use to check up on him. I'll be like, hey man, how's that nomad lifestyle? You still living in the van? How did you go snowboarding this weekend? Anything, just to keep yourself front of mind for them when they are looking again, or when we have a spot available. I already have a little bit of rapport built with them that I can work off of extremely easily for a second interview.
That's awesome. I love that. And just like devoting, I know a lot of owners are probably just like, how does this guy have the time to even do this? But I think that just, it doesn't take that much time, and it can make a world of a difference in terms of the amount of time that now you're able to save on not having to go through this whole process of just finding fresh candidates every single time you need something.
And the time thing is a big concern for every owner. But that also, you can boil the time available to do staffing and hiring back down to your culture. If you have the correct culture and you have good leadership skills, you should be trying to lead yourself out of a job and leading those underneath you to fill your responsibilities. You have more time to do this.
Yeah.
Because if you're strapped for time, man, if you're an owner that's on the counter or is turning wrenches or something, it's going to be hard. You can do it, but it's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
But still do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Highly. And so would you say, what percentage of the time would you say you just hire straight from the bench that you have?
I've done that twice. And we don't have a whole lot of turnover here, so hard to give you an estimate on a percentage of how many people I hire right off the bench. My last 2 hires were right off the bench, though. Yeah. Actually, my last 3 hires were off the bench. I take that back. Yeah. Last 3. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure that again saved a bunch of time. And then so in terms of now the process of them starting, I know sorry to go back and forth here, but the process of them starting, is there, I know you mentioned there's like a probationary period, we'll call it something more with a positive connotation next time. But what are there, like just SOPs that you already have that this person is going to do this and this to check these boxes off, or what sort of training do you have them do, if any?
Training is huge, and we're growing at a pace right now where some of the positions that I've hired recently, I don't really have an SOP manual for them. The stuff that I've been doing. So I don't have it like printed out in a binder or anything like that. Biggest thing that we do with all new hires is they need to learn our POS system. Whether they're a technician or a rider or a CSR, they have to know how to navigate that. So we have some YouTube videos that are privately listed that we'll send them so that they can watch that, get a little bit more immersed in some of the advanced navigation of our POS system. And then like the basics is where you're going to put the keys. This is how we check in the parts. This is how we handle part returns, stuff like that. And a lot of the things, like, again, I told you I'm a peacock, right? So I like to work with a new teammate. Like, dude, I don't know what a CSR really does for sure. I have a little bit of background information from some shop owner friends. You and I are going to work on this together and design the perfect job description for a CSR. I'll get them involved a little bit too. Yeah. Because everyone has experience from previous employers, previous industries that they can bring into this industry to make a boring job description pretty exciting. Yeah. So you got to be open to that too. You have to. So even with a technician, be like, this is how we change oil the Denny's Auto way. This is how we mount and balance tires the Denny's Auto way. If you have a better way, show me. Yeah. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out together. I love that. I love just being open to that responsiveness back, because I think that's what the leader is being all about. Yeah. It's not just always herding the cat. It's like you want to listen to what they have to say so you can adjust and
making sure the direction that you think that you need to go, maybe it does need to divert just a little bit. So
for sure, man. You hire people that are smarter than you, so you can focus on what you're good at. And yeah, the tire guys are a hell of a lot better at me than doing tires. So if they have a different system that works, we can systemize that, write it down, make a procedure, good to go. And then we can review that later on when we get another tire guy. Be like, hey, this is how we do it. It's not set in stone. Everything's fluid. So we can change these procedures to make it more efficient or productive if we need to. But,
yep, absolutely. And then I know you guys just had a kind of an offsite activity here this past Monday. And so I would love to hear how you come up with the activities of what to do for the shop, and then how often you go about doing them.
Yeah, for sure, man. We'll start with ditch days, and then we'll do the big one, camping trip second. But ditch days, we do a ditch day in the spring and a ditch day in the fall. Ditch days mean that we're going to work till noon and then take the afternoon off. We're going to go to Top Golf, axe throwing. Mulligan's is like a little putt place with batting cages or something like that.
Yep.
And we'll get some input from the team. What do you want to do? Whatever. It just has to be something where we have to talk to each other. So it can't be like, hey, let's go to a movie together. That's lame. Like, no, I'm not a big movie guy. I probably fall asleep in the theater anyway. And the point of that is to get together as a team outside.
Yep.
Because we've done like archery, Top Golf, and axe throwing. Yeah, we try to shake it up a little bit. We've done bowling a couple of times, which is pretty fun. But yeah, the guys look forward to that. And believe it or not, our customer base thinks it's the coolest thing in the world that we take a half a day off to go play together. They think it's really cool because they want to, because we support the community. And I think this is just a theory, but I think the community wants to support a business that is taking care of people, their internal customers, right? They're actually taking time out to appreciate them. And the camping trips, that's fairly new. This is our third year of doing the camping trips. And that just pulled that out of a hat. We're like, let's do something a little bit more exciting.
Yeah.
Like, I think it might have actually started out as a goal. If we hit this amount of revenue, we'll do a camping trip or something. And we had so much fun. We're like, we're just going to do this every single camping trips. We've done Lava Hot Springs, Palisade, Colorado, and Bear Lake in Utah. So it's fun. We kind of let everyone it's a camping thing with their families too. So their families get to come. And so I don't want to make it too structured when George has his kids there or something. He wants to go enjoy Lava Hot Springs with his kids too. So to get everyone together on a camping trip, we'll do a massive family team dinner. We'll do a breakfast and a dinner. And this last one, we had like 28 people, 25 people to cook for. And it's the funnest damn thing in the world.
Yeah.
And you're cooking for all these people. There's kids running around. There's dogs. It's a riot. And that's also a good opportunity where you get to start forming those relationships with their spouses and their kids. If you win over the spouses never going to want them to leave.
Yeah.
And that's a selfish motivation for doing a camping trip. But it's a strategy too. And I do genuinely want to get to know their spouses.
Yeah, that is amazing. I think that just really coincides to the industry is a service-based industry. And so now what you're accomplishing with this is being service-based now for your team. And that no one when they receive service is ever going to feel like, oh wow, how dare they give me service. It's like that is it's not a natural human instinct. If it is, they probably do not fit the shop culture of what you're trying to develop, because then that'd be an easy red flag. But I think it's just a great way to give back and give really positive feelings. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. I look forward to it every year. We're just wrapped that one up, like you said, on Monday. So Darren and I have been working. Okay, where are we going to go next year? What activities can we do next year? Is there like a ropes course or an adventure park that's kid friendly that we can all go together and play at, or something like that? But yeah, man, it's a good time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You have shared some amazing information with us today in terms of culture and hiring. So I definitely really appreciate that. And so now just as we wrap up here, I'm curious to know, like, what has influenced you to decide to build this type of culture? Or are there certain books that you read, or was there certain inspirational leaders that you heard about that then did something similar? Or just like, what kind of has led you in this direction?
That's a really good question, because I'm a big book reader, right? I read a lot. So there's multiple influences from books. We are part of a coaching company. My coach told us about the importance of culture and the need for it to change. But I think what it really boils down to me, I think that the community, internal and external customers, they're all underserved. And I think they deserve more than that. And so I want to do whatever I possibly can to make sure my team is happy and my community is happy. Because I think any service-based or trade industry, for lack of a better word, sucks at taking care of their people and servicing their customers appropriately. So that's my main motivation behind it. I want to stand out that way. I want to be known as the shop that truly cares for the customer base and truly cares for the internal team as well.
Awesome. I love that. And so as a last final thought, I know this is a common problem for a lot of shops right now, just finding people. What would be your number one suggestion for those shops that may be struggling?
Number one suggestion for shops that are struggling with staffing: you need to get out in front of it. I knew this was coming, and so it's not a surprise. You got caught on your heels. So now it's time to buckle down, get serious. Technicians know other technicians, riders know other riders. Start asking your team if they know anybody else. And if they're part of a networking group or something like that. I subbed for Darren the other day, and I didn't talk about the shop at all. I just wanted to know if anyone knew any technicians or service riders that loved their job, loved their boss, loved their pay, but could love all that a little bit more. That's all that I wanted. And that's a great tactic, because people, you say that and they're like, you know what? I do know another technician, or I do know a mechanic that's happy, but he could be happier. He's worth more, right?
Yeah.
So getting out in front of it, and if you're struggling with it, it's going to be tough, but you got to step back, get in front of that bowl again, and start looking more seriously, man. Facebook, I would recommend Facebook to start out with. That was when I first did that. I got someone that came in for an interview the same day. So that was a good starting point for us.
Amazing.
And I'll always have an ad out. If you're struggling and you're behind, have an ad out on Indeed or Craigslist or whatever your preferred listing site is, but have an ad out at all times to build that bench up.
Perfect. Mitch, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to potentially reach out to you and has a question or wants to talk shop with you, what would be the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I love talking shop with new people, so feel free to reach out anytime. Best way to reach me is going to probably be by email. My email address is mitch@dennysautomotive.com.
Perfect. All right. Mitch, thank you again for joining us today. And for those of you that are still with us this far into the interview, thank you so much for listening. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the YouTube channel below to have the latest and greatest videos that we have out. But thank you all, and talk to you again soon. See ya.